Well, I'm back from vacation, so I guess I should get back to our regular scheduled programming. Oh boy. So I guess we should get to it before too long. Hello, everyone. Britton here, also known as Samoki Dude, and today I am covering yet another horror book as part of the spoopathon, where I cover, read, and basically talk about nothing but horror during the month of Halloween. That is October. And the book I'm covering today is Blackheart Boys Choir by Curtis M. Lawson. Now, I should make the disclaimer, I do know Curtis. I consider him a friend of mine. And I read this around the time that we first met, and he very kindly gave me this book. Actually signed it for me, so here you go right there. Very kind of him. But I should note that our friendship is not going to affect this review. I'm going to be as... now, luckily, I like this book, but I did want to say that I'm not letting our friendship get in the way of this review. This review is my genuine thoughts of what I thought, even despite the fact that we are friends. Luckily, I do enjoy this book, so it doesn't have to be too awkward today. But I just wanted to say that up front. I am friends with the guy, so my objectivity is not going to be as... it's not going to be as objective as some might say. But I tried to keep it as objective as possible because, I don't want my friendships with certain authors to cloud my judgment. And I also thought about having Curtis on this channel to talk about Blackheart Boys Choir at one point, but we've already talked about it a lot. Like, I actually interviewed him talking about Blackheart Boys Choir a few years ago as part of a newspaper assignment, because I work at my school's newspaper, and I felt we would just be treading water if I asked him to come on and talk about Blackheart Boys Choir, and that is something I would like to do in the future, get Curtis on and talk about one of his books, maybe like Devil's Night, which is a pretty solid collection, and The Devoured, which is a horror western that I quite enjoyed from him. But I still think that Blackheart Boys Choir is his best book, at least so far, and yeah, I guess I should get to it before too long. I don't want to start rambling. It's not often that a book makes me want to throw it across the room and exclaim, hurrah, in ecstasy, but this book definitely does. And if you don't feel the overwhelming urge of joy when reading this book, then you're most likely dead. I don't say this because Curtis is my friend. I say this book is simply that good. Me and him being friends is merely a bonus. I decided to read this since it was at the time Curtis's most recent book, and it still remains my favorite of his work that I've read thus far. The main character of this book is a guy named Lucien Beaumont. The guy's kind of an insufferable prick. Yet, once you understand his home life, you'll understand why he's this way. His dad's dead, his mom's gone off the rails, turning to drugs out of despair, and he's going to a public school that he absolutely despises, which... let me tell you, I understand. He's acquired his father's gift for music and his obsession to be the best, and it drives him to do a lot of things that most people wouldn't dare to do. There were certainly times in this book where I wanted to punch Lucien right in his smug, stupid face, but there were also times I felt sorry for the poor guy. There were moments where I wanted to sit down with the guy and tell him he wasn't alone in his pain, and he didn't have to go down this path. But this book probably wouldn't be a horror book if he decided to see the bright side of things and understand himself and gain more empathy for his fellow man. But I digress. One of the things that Curtis does exceptionally well in this novel is exploring why people feel the need to act out so violently, and his story of artistic obsession may remind you of some films as Whiplash or Amadeus, which I know Curtis is quite fond of. Except in this book, there's more of a surreal horror lens to the book being told here today. Curtis once described this book as emotionally autobiographical, and I can see where he's coming from. And as you can read this book, you can see that this book is definitely close to Curtis's heart. And we see him bearing parts of himself to the world. Luckily, he hasn't tried to start a song that might end the world, as far as I'm aware. But you can definitely tell there's a lot of himself that he put into this book. A lot of pouring out some pretty dark emotions that he might have felt in his earlier life. Curtis also understands why people root for repugnant characters such as Walter White or Alex from A Clockwork Orange or even Patrick Bateman, whose name dropped in this book. Even though he was an arrogant jerk, Lucien that is, I still felt for this character. But make no mistake, Lucien is not some folk hero or martyr. He's an angry kid, acting out, and wanting to hurt people in the same way he was hurt. Yet, at the same time, I couldn't fully shut off my empathy for this kid, much as he could be extremely hateable at times, and even as he really crosses that moral horizon as the book goes along. Curtis writes with a smooth flow, though, and there's never a moment in here that feels wasted. He has that just right quality about his prose that can be a joy to encounter when you're reading. It's not often I knock out books in several days like I did back in 2020. Man, what a time to be alive. Yet this one sucked me in, and it was very hard to let go once I started reading it. The rest of the characters were just as compelling as Lucien was. I found myself particularly feeling the most connection to Maxwell, who is Lucien's poor, hapless best friend, and really his only true friend as this book goes along. There are some other characters he becomes friends with, like Asher and JC, but there's never the sense that they're actually friends. I feel like Asher and JC are kind of using Lucien as an excuse to act out their own evil desires and urges, while Maxwell feels like a genuine friend to Lucien and actually looks out for Lucien and wants him to do well for himself. And I remember being more like Maxwell when I was in high school, in my high school days, which, to think about it, wasn't very long ago. And Curtis actually captures the high school atmosphere very well. I mean, I was in choir myself, and let me tell you, he got those kids freaking right. Oh my god. Yes. Oh man. I mean, I wasn't a Lucien kind of character. I just I understand his anger though, because I knew a lot of kids in choir who were just, well, they weren't very nice, let's put it. I'm not going to rant about that. That's a story for another time. But I remember it being more like him when I was in high school, and if I were in a different world, or if I were in the fictional world of Blackheart Boys Choir, maybe we could have become friends. I don't know. And I also felt more sorry for him as the story moves along and he gets into more bad situations, and also just having a friend who's as cantankerous, egotistical, and downright manipulative as Lucien can be, because my god, Lucien can be a pain in the ass. But you know, no book is perfect, and Blackheart Boys Choir hardly is. There were some issues I had with this book, despite the mountains of praise that I imbue upon it. The ambiguity that this book employs, while mostly done well in enhancing the narrative, could sometimes be disorienting, and I'll admit that was probably the point, and Curtis's, I'll be fair, it was probably the point. It's not really meant to be entirely coherent. And also, it's meant to implement ambiguity in the reliability of Lucien's narrative, but I digress. The betrayal of Violet, who is the main object of Lucien's obsession, well, aside from being one of the greatest musicians who's ever lived, was also interesting. It's not bad or tasteless, as some other books that I might have mentioned before, but there's definitely some issues I had. At first, it seems like she'll be Lucien's version of Jean from American Psycho. You guys remember? She's more egotistical and vain than Patrick's secretary. Now, to be fair, she does have her moments of depth. She does have her moments where she shines and has things that she's troubled by, and she also has some demons that she's dealing with as well. But I never really found they were as impactful as Lucien and his friends' character moments were. And I think it could have been done better, but, you know, it's I think we could have seen more from Violet even. Though, of course, we're seeing it from Lucien's perspective, and we're not in, like, a third-person perspective, of course. But yeah, I didn't feel it was as impactful as it was with Lucien and his friends. I do think we could have seen more from Violet, though, to be fair, this is a story from Lucien's perspective. This is a first-person narration, so that probably wasn't going to happen, but nonetheless, I think some more exploration into Violet would have been interesting. Also, some of the slang is pretty dated in this. I know that's a bit of an insignificant criticism, perhaps, but nonetheless, my point stands. There were, I think, like, oh god, like something pig. If Curtis watches this, you can let me know what it is in the comments. I forget what it is specifically, but I remember reading that. I'm like, nobody freaking says that, or at least nobody I know has said that. Now he could be riffing because we grew up in different periods, but I digress. If there is one lesson to be learned from Blackheart Boys Choir, it's that hatred doesn't really solve anything. As euphoric and triumphant as this novel can be, there is also this lingering bitter feeling that comes from all the violence and despair that comes from Lucien's obsession. How it could have been so easily avoided if someone actually had given a shit for a moment. Curtis never glorifies the actions of his characters. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of stuff in this book that's downright horrifying. But he seeks to understand. And there is kind of that darker part in Curtis that does understand. And you can definitely feel that as you explore this book and its many secrets. His portrait of troubled youth seeks to be a warning about the dangers of artistic obsession, as well as hatred and rage infecting your soul, and how in the end, it's all meaningless. It's a haunting yet oddly euphoric experience, especially towards the end, as we see Lucien's final triumph, while also being extremely horrifying and disturbing, and he's kind of losing his grip on reality. So yeah, that's kind of most of what I got for this review. I'm really glad that I was able to cover one of Curtis's books. I've been wanting to do it for a while. I would have done it last year, but October always goes by so quickly, as do the other months. But I'm glad that I managed to give Curtis some love. I think he is a very underrated writer, and I'm not just saying that because we're friends. I think he is a genuinely very talented writer, and I do think that Blackheart Boys Choir is still my favorite of his books. I've only read 3 of his books so far, this one, The Devoured, and Devil's Night, and I still like this one the most. I also really like the cover art. It's by a guy named Luke Spooner. And I really love the colors, the purples, the blacks. I really love the, like, I don't know how to describe it. Like this really hazy kind of, kind of it's very fluid, I think is a good term for it. And I really like it a lot. And Curtis is a good writer. I think he's very underappreciated. He's not really covered on BookTube a lot, though I have seen him making the rounds. He has interviewed with people like Brad Proctor. And I've also talked to him on Britain's Hangout Hour. He was actually my second episode, if I remember correctly. I think he's very good. And I actually do think, a little hint, I am considering using Mr. Spooner myself if I ever get A Plague of Nightmares up and going. I still need to edit it a little bit. But he is in my mind if I ever do decide to figure out what I'm going to do to publish it. If I do self-publish it, I'm going to see if I can get him to do it, because I really love this art style, and I think he would do really good for the world that I'm creating with the New World. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Go find me on Twitter. You can also find me on Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. You can also find me on Goodreads. You can also find me on, I just said Goodreads. You can also find me on Instagram and Blue Sky, even though I barely use Blue Sky as is. I'm also on Discord. I have a Discord server. Come check it out. I like hanging out with you guys. Also, like, comment, subscribe. I'm trying to get to 500 at the moment. It's getting towards the end of the year. We only have about 30 subscribers left before I get to 500. Please, I would really like to get to 500 by the end of the year. That would just be great. And I appreciate you all, though. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your grandma. Well, maybe don't tell your grandma. I do curse a lot on this channel. But tell everyone. And as John likes to say at Talking Story, it feels good when you click that like and subscribe button. So, that's about it. and I do hope to cover more of Curtis's books, and maybe even get Curtis on here to talk about one of his books at some point, because he's an interesting guy. Though he is kind of in hiding at the moment, and he's doing his own thing. I haven't talked to him in a while. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and until next time, see you guys later. Bye.